When hope is gone, undo this lock and send me forth on a moonlit walk. Release restraint level 0. Hey kids, wanna see a dead body?
Hi guys, this is the Void of the Ravenclaw. Welcome back to another fanfiction story. If you like this type of content, smash the like button and subscribe for future updates that I post on my community tab frequently. Now let's continue where we last left off in our story. As we start our story off, while Dusk is following Scarlet through the halls of the palace into a large, wide area that's used for training purposes. On the palace ground, this is one of many training areas we have around the palace. This is the most spread out of them all, so anyone can safely test more destructive abilities like Hellhound Fire and any destructive magic. There are wards around this area just in case something more powerful was cast. It's such a precaution. I would prefer my palace not to be damaged in any way. When it comes to magic, it can be very unpredictable. You've been very composed since your rebirth, so I don't have to worry about for you to do something stupid. I see you're curious about the magical wards. You'll be definitely learning that at the academy. I believe I have a couple books laying around in my private library. I'll have one of the staff bring you the beginning spell book of magical wards and barriers. It's a very useful spell book that I picked up on one day when I was on Earth. It would be most appreciated. I have no doubt. I have much to learn when it comes to magic. I believe barriers and wards would be a good first start. Expect nothing less of you, my love. I'll demonstrate first and show you the steps to activate your Hellfire. It shouldn't be a problem for you. It should be second nature. Scarlet extended her hand outwards towards the target in the middle of the training field. What you have to do is to activate your Hellfire to close your eyes. What you have to do is focus on the heat in your chest and draw it outwards. Then release it. As a fireball shoot out of Scarlet's hand, vaporizing the target. I might not be a hellhound, but the steps are not that much different compared how devils use their hellfire for the very first time. After all, we are creatures of hell. We have access to that element. Even some devils have ability as ice. Only a rare few devils gain such abilities without even using any type of magic. I'll let you get to it. I have some paperwork I must finish. Scarlet turned around to walk away. Dusk focused his full attention on the task before him and trying to activate his Hellfire. Dusk closed his eyes and extended his hand outwards towards the target that was reposted by one of the imps. Standing to the side, Dusk followed Scarlet's instructions and finally felt the spark in his chest as he drew it out, as half of the training area was engulfed with green fire. If it wasn't for the wards in place and the barriers, the training field would be extremely heavily damaged, and probably the palace wall as well, and maybe some of the city. Dusk deactivated his fire from his hands. Once the flames finally cleared, he saw the result. Dusk sees the ground has a slight cover of glass from the extreme amount of heat he just released. Dusk couldn't help but laugh at the display of power, making all the imps around the training field extremely nervous. From the psychotic hellhound, Imp, load the next target. Now. The shivering imp shook out of his fear and began to place more targets around the training field. Now that I know how to use my hellfire, let's work on control. As Dusk began training his control and working on creating a couple of fire attacks, he worked on this for several hours. Eventually Dusk called it a day. One of the demon maids showed him to his chambers, as Deku noticed Scarlet reading a book on the bed, waiting for his arrival. Judging by the sounds I've been hearing earlier, it seems you've been hard at work. I'm getting the hang of it. I am nowhere near mastery of my hellfire yet. You get there, love. You're far more powerful than any hellhound that hell has ever produced. Unlike the rest of your kin, you're far more powerful than a normal hellhound, so it will require you to have a harder time controlling your abilities. But I have faith in you. You get a handle on it. Scarlet pat her hand on the bed for Dusk to join her. Why don't you get dressed in your sleepwear and join me in bed? I'm a bit surprised you want me to sleep in the same chambers with you. I know I'm technically your fiancé. Sweetheart, I'm a devil, and you're a hellhound. We have different morals than humans. I know it's going to be a large adjustment. I don't know how you lived while your time when you were a human. Dusk picked up the black sleepwear and began to put it on, while Scarlet was reading her book. The moment he lay down next to Scarlet, she shut the book, then leaned her head against his chest, and wrapped her arms around his waist. Before snapping her fingers as all the lights shut off in the room. The next morning, Dusk got up early, noticing Scarlet wasn't in bed. Dusk paid that no mind. He figured she had to get up pretty early to do her daily routine as a Prince of Hell. Dusk already knows that she probably has a lot of responsibilities for being the one in charge of this level of hell. Dusk decided to get early, well, to get his day early, well, get his training out early. Dust decided to get dressed. When he was fully dressed, he was interrupted by a knock on the door. As a demon maid came in with a rolling tray of food for Dusk. The maid bowed and left the chamber. Dusk ate his breakfast, then immediately start his morning off with a light jog around the palace grounds. Then practice using his Hellfire at the same training area that's on the palace ground where he was yesterday. Then make his way over to the academy. Dusk followed this routine for several years, learning quite a lot from his time at the academy and training on his own. He kept himself out of trouble out of the academy. The only socializing he would do if it was absolutely necessary. Dusk is just focusing on all the information he could learn at this academy for devils and demons. 30 years of this flew by. During the 30 years, his time at the academy, he learned quite a bit about hell and his abilities, and gained quite a bit of knowledge of magic. At the 10-year mark at the academy, Dusk was able to figure out to increase and decrease his size when he's in his Hellhound form. Dusk is standing in front of a Hellhound headquarters known as Cerberus, named after the three-headed dog that guards the underworld in the Greek pantheon. The Greek version of hell. It's his first day at his new job. Dusk walked in to see several hellhounds going about their business. Several of them are in their human form, and the other ones are walking around in their hellhound form. Because they haven't learned that ability yet. They're still too inexperienced to shift into a human form. Dusk walked towards the elevator. When the elevator door finally opened up, he stepped inside and pressed the only button on the elevator the highest button on the elevator to the top floor to meet his new boss. Once he got to the top floor, he walked down a narrow hallway. That only source of light he could see is the torches all along the wall of the hallway, until he saw a humongous door. Dusk knocked on it twice, only to hear a feminine voice telling him to come in. Dusk walked into the huge office where there is only one person in the room. Dusk assumes that that's his new boss, a brunette hellhound with orange streaks in her hair, with dog-like ears on top of her head, with a fluffy tail swaying around from behind her as she looked up from her paperwork to see who entered her office. "Ah, you're here. Please sit down. It'll just be a moment. I'm just finishing up some important paperwork." Dusk did what he was asked as he sat down across from the office, remaining quiet. Emperor picked up the stack of papers and tapped it onto the desk. Line up all the papers, then gently put it in a designated spot on her desk. So you must be Dusk. I'm your new boss, Amber Ashwood. Welcome aboard. According to your file, you pass all your courses at the Academy with high marks. Most impressive. I expect nothing less from a fellow Hellhound. Let's get a good look at you. No ears, of course. That's only a natural trait only females of our kind get. I'll give you a rundown. What you be doing here. If you don't know already, proud Hellhounds of Hell are responsible for collecting on any of the deals that are made from any demon or devil or succubus that they make with a human by killing them and collecting their soul. Every hellhound on the field will be provided with a soul container. That's not all we do here, Dusk. Quite often, we provide any demon, devil, or Grim Reaper with a hellhound to partner up with. All hellhounds are partnered up with a devil or demon. It really depends on the devil. And I was told of a hellhound only around 600 years old, has the ability to shift into his human form from birth. I was quite surprised. And the fact that you were personally churned into a hellhound by the Prince of Hell herself, that alone caught my eye. I'm not the type to coddle my employees. I'll give you a simple case. Just give me a second. The file's around here somewhere. I really should hire a secretary. Ah, there it is. Make sure you read it thoroughly. It's not a high-profile case, but the soul is important regardless. Dusk took the file and opened it up to see a picture of his target, some sort of scientist. The file even had the details of their deal. It was a quite simple bargain. A soul exchanged for some knowledge to help the human in his field as a scientist. Before you go on your first hunt, you'll be surprised that time hasn't moved very fast since your rebirth. You might have spent 600 years or so in hell. In truth, only 3 years has passed. Time moves differently in hell compared to Earth. Considering this case is in Japan, much probably wouldn't have changed in the 3 years you've been gone. According to a couple of the more seasonal hellhounds in my employ, it's still quite chaotic. Just be mindful of the humans and the yokai that do roams those lands. I'll keep that in mind moving forward. I have no intention of starting any trouble with the yokai or the vampires. Is there a pack of werewolves in Japan? There's a few, but they shouldn't bother you. I'll get right on to it, ma'am. That's a good pup. I expect great things from you. Dusk got up and bowed and left the office and exit the headquarters of the Hellhounds and made his way to one of the Hell Gates. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a permit to portal from Hell to Earth. Dusk hasn't had time to take the test to get the permit or the license. When Dusk finally found one of the Hell Gates, he began his travel through it, on Earth, as you see a old abandoned orphanage, as the fireplace of the orphanage caught on fire, as the fireplace changed into a black, solid gate, as it opened up to reveal Dusk walking through. The moment he walked out of the gate, the fireplace turned back into a fireplace. From behind him, Dusk made his way out of the rundown abandoned orphanage. Dusk began to walk towards the city. The orphanage was outside of the boundaries of the nearest city in the area. It's a very small city. Dusk paid attention to his surroundings when he entered a small city. The humans haven't. Oh, sorry. Amber was right. The humans haven't changed much. Much. Disgusting vermin. Information on that file. My target is in that building. That's a cover for a secret lab. Dusk did notice several of the humans that he passed on the street had glazed eyes, and moving like they're on autopilot, like puppets being controlled. This wasn't in the files. The city is sure damn fishy. Clearly being controlled, or at least under some sort of mind control. Dusk finally approached the large building in the middle of the city. Close enough, Dusk stopped from moving as he turned around to see all the humans stop and turn around towards their head, towards Dusk, and begin to walk towards his direction, and began to charge, and started to become more violent as Dusk dodged a couple humans charging at him. This just proves it. These humans are being controlled somehow. Distasteful. Dusk jumped backwards from the building and entered the middle of the street, and extended his two hands towards each side of the street from the main street road as a bright flash engulfed the city. When the flash dissipated, all you could see is the charred ground. Only building left is the large building that Dusk is after, as the entire city was completely wiped out. As you can see, charred bodies scattered all around the wasteland that was once a city. It might have been a very small city, but the action is quite impressive. This display of power that Dusk just released. Can't use this attack in rapid succession. Dubbed this attack of his as Hell Flash. It's his most powerful attack, infusing his mana into his Hellfire, making the results very devastating. It usually takes a good chunk of his amount of mana in his mana reserves to use. He still needs to refine this attack. In Hell, at the castle of Lucifer, as you can see, a very small white-haired devil sitting on a throne made of bone, watching the image in the air of Dusk, first hunt, with Scarlet standing right next to the throne. Whoa, boom, flash. That was so cool. Scarlet sighed to herself of Lucifer's childlike behavior. Lucifer is well known to have two forms, an adult male form, and the most common form that you would see Lucifer in is in his small female child form, wearing a black dress with a white snake always nearby her, while Lucifer is in her childlike form. Lucifer was once an angel, but never fully chose a gender, like most angels in heaven. They're born genderless, but they slowly shift to one side of the spectrum. You're sure powerful, Scarlet. I'm having loads of fun. This is better than watching human TV. Tunnels in hell are so boring. I'm happy you're amused, Lucifer. Lucifer pout. How many times I've told you, call me Lucy in this form, Scarlet. For a brief moment, Lucifer released a bit of her power to show her subordinate that she's super serious. Okay, I get it, Lucy. That's better. Now let's watch the puppy on his first hunt. Don't think I haven't noticed. You had a new hellhound created through the old ways. Nothing happens in hell that escapes my notice. I do apologize. It was a chance encounter. I couldn't pass up the chance. As long as he's a good puppy, then I forgive you. Back on Earth, Dusk shot a fireball at the door of the building, destroying the entryway. As Dusk calmly walks in, walking out of the dust cloud, as several humans wearing squat gear armor all point their rifles at the hellhound. All of them immediately open fire as the bullets simply ricochet off of Dusk's skin. When the gunfire finally stopped, Dusk looked at his body to see no injuries, not even a bruise. It's good to know I'm bulletproof. Dusk disappeared, then reappeared right in front of the closest human and shoved his hand into the man's chest. Dusk ripped through that armor like it was paper. As you can see Dusk's arm going all the way through to his back, as the rest of the humans could see his heart in the grasp of his hand, as Dusk violently ripped his hand out of the human's chest, as the human dropped dead to the ground, as Dusk crushed the heart in his hands. As the man slowly drops to the ground dead, Dusk motioned his hands like he was holding some sort of invisible object, as a burst of fire burst through his fingertips, forming into two bone daggers, then immediately got into an assassin stance and gave a vicious grin on his face, revealing his sharp canines in his mouth and charging forward, cutting one of the rifles in half with his bone dagger and threw the other one in his hand into the middle of the air as the bone dagger flies around, piercing several humans in the head. As as Dusk caught the flying dagger when it came towards his direction. As he licked the blood from the blade of the dagger. Suddenly, half of the members of the SWAT team fall down dead, leaving only half of them left alive. The SWAT members in the back, the SWAT member in the back approached the front as other squad members back up a little bit as he shot out fire out of his hands towards Dusk. Dusk simply stopped the fire and caught it in his hand as he clenched his fist, making the fire dissipate in front of the humans, surprising them. Is that all you have? Now it's my turn. As fire erupts from Dusk's mouth, vaporizing the rest of the humans, as they instantly were turned to bodies of ash as they begin to fall. Dusk looked over to see a camera still intact. As he looked up to the camera, "I know you're there, Mr. Scientist. I know you're watching. You made a deal, and I'm here to collect. But please, do resist. The more you resist, the more entertaining it is for me." As Dusk shot a fireball at the camera destroying it, Dusk eventually entered the elevator. There were several buttons on the elevator panel for the lower floors. These little humans, they must have an underground laboratory. I'm a bit curious about this lab and their projects. I might have to have a look around before I destroy the place. The elevator began to descend to the lower level. It took about 30 minutes to get to the bottom as the elevator door opened up to reveal a pure white hallway that has several metal doors to the side, to each side of the hallway. It's pretty wide hallway. It didn't take Dusk long to notice more humans in some sort of military uniform start to open fire as a couple turret guns activate and open fire as well. That's mounted on the wall. Dusk reflect every bullet with his bone daggers right back at the humans, with their making the bullets ricochet back at them, with their own bullets mowing them down. As the two turret guns blew up from being pierced by several of the bullets that was redirected towards them as the automatic turret guns deactivated after being blown up. Too heavily damaged to operate. Dusk walk over the dead bodies and Dusk walked over the dead bodies and press on until he got to the end of the hallway to find a huge metal blast door that's blocking his path. The moment the blast door was open, a beam of energy shot Dusk, pushing him back as he slammed the beam of energy to the ground by redirecting it with his bare hands. He cut the beam before the beam actually managed to hit him. Dusk looked straight ahead to see what shot him as he saw several more humans in the same uniform. In the front row, several humans were holding onto a large beam rifle. It took 3 people to lift it up. It's huge and way too heavy for one person, It's a prototype weapon in development. And from the beam, hitting Dusk's hands, is visible as steam is emanating from the palm of his hands from catching the laser. As the rifle begins to glow, as it begins to fire another round at Dusk, Dusk rushed forward with incredible speed as the beam rifle opened fire. Dusk leaned to the left while running as the beam shot past Dusk. Dusk, when got in range, kicked the beam rifle upwards from the muzzle, then spin kick all three of the humans that were holding the beam rifle in the face at the same time, snapping their necks from the force of his kick. Dusk grabbed the beam rifle before it hit the ground and turned the beam towards the remaining forces of the humans, then immediately opened fire, full blast, as the beam rifle shot a energy beam, engulfing the entire hallway. The rifle started a short circuit as it began to smoke, as the beam rifle was almost overheated. As Dusk tossed the rifle to the side and continued to move forward until he found himself in a large room with a bunch of containment cells filled with people, animals, alongside with a few vampires and werewolves in some sort of silver containment cell. Once Dusk entered the large containment wing of the laboratory, all the werewolves became very scared and submissive when they locked eyes with Dusk. Even some of the vampires were very uneasy. These vampires might be churned vampires, but they're fully aware of what a hellhound is because of their close relationship between the vampires and the devils. But many vampires fear hellhounds for a good reason. No, why or how a bunch of humans managed to capture you, vampire and werewolves. But sit tight. After my business is finished, I'll come back and release you. Shouldn't take long. Dusk walked off and went towards the other side of the room to enter through the blast doors across the room. As Dusk began to follow a few hallways that eventually split off into two different directions, he just picked a direction. Eventually, he found his target in a weird laboratory/operation room where a large rodent creature that resembles a white mouse is on a metal slab table, restrained. The metal table is connected to some sort of strange device that produces shocks of electricity into the small rodent while they run their experiments. Deku vaporized every scientist in the room except for his target. Hello, human. Out of curiosity, why did you not try to run? Instead, I find you with your late colleagues doing experiments. Why bother? I knew Hell was going to send a hellhound after me after my timetable was expired. My research is far more important to me. You kill me. May I ask a last request? Can you grant a dying man's wish? I'll humor you, human. because we had a similar occupation when I was a mere human myself. The scientists inject some sort of serum into the white creature that resembles a white mouse, knocking the life form out. It's just a sedative. As the scientists walked towards the main console in the room and started to download everything into a more advanced flash drive. I've done a lot of bad things in the name of science, but my work is my legacy. I just don't want my work to be forgotten or lost to history. And this chimera you see before you is my grand achievement. Studying the vampires and werewolves was the result of my grand achievement that I have contained in the cells. But I'm not stupid. I'm fully aware, even if I were able to escape you, most likely a hellhound, you would eventually catch me, or the vampires and werewolves would get to me first. Either way, I'm a dead man. And I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm just simply requesting that you do not destroy my work. What you do with it doesn't matter, as long as you don't destroy it. Very well. You said you were once a scientist. That I did. May I ask what field you were in? Quirk research and development and weapon development. I don't remember most of my time on Earth when I was human, but I know for a fact that I was the main scientist. I actually was the lead scientist of my department and a member of the board to the corporation that I used to work for. I take it I'm going to hell then. Most likely. Will it hurt? It's going to be extremely painful. Why is that, may I ask? Because I'm going to eat you. The old man scientist had a small smile on his face. Well, I'm not really looking forward to that. It's done. The scientists hand over a flash drive to Dusk. Dusk put the flash drive in his pocket and began to shift into his hellhound form. Dusk is big enough to tower over the human, but not big enough to not move around in the room. As the three-headed hellhound stared down at the human scientist, where the scientist sees the three heads talking all at once. This is what a hellhound looks like. Quite terrifying. It's where you're wrong, human scientist. No other hellhound in hell looks like me. I'm unique. Goodbye, scientist. As the three-headed hellhound begin to bite and tear the man, to ripping the human scientist to pieces, as Dusk begins to eat the remains. Once Dusk ate his pound of flesh, he reverted back to his human form and took out a black metal flask that had a skull engraved onto it. As the human scientist's soul becomes visible and gets sucked into the flask, Dusk shut the lid of the flask and put it in his pocket. Dusk heard a voice coming from the direction of the white furry creature that's still on the metal table. Are you going to eat me like you ate the human scientist? No. I have no intention of eating you. As Dusk cut the bindings. Come on, I'll get you out of here. Then you're on your own. Dusk noted a small creature was struggling to get to his feet, still heavily dosed from whatever drug that was injected into his bloodstream. He just regained consciousness when he saw the three-headed large creature begin to eat the human scientist. So Dusk picked up the small rodent and put him on his shoulders, surprising the chimera. Do you have a name, creature? No, they just call me Subject 248. I'm not calling you that. Pick a name. Nezu, the small creature thought for a few minutes. Call me Nezu. It's a pleasure to meet you, Nezu. Nezu shook Dusk's hand by shaking his finger. Nezu's still young and not at his full size. I know you're not human, but what exactly are you? A hellhound, Nezu. Nezu was extremely intelligent. He's been a lab experiment his entire life, so he's not very familiar with the term hellhound. But Nezu put that at the back of his mind for now, for future reference, to research on a later date. He wants to know more about what type of creature that saved him from being experimented on and most likely killed. Dusk and Nezu walked into the large containment wing where all the subjects were being kept. Dusk freed the werewolves first. Freeing the werewolves and the vampires at the same time would not be too bright. They would instantly start attacking each other. He decided to let the werewolves out first. They'll mow over any stragglers that managed to stay alive if they got in their way. Werewolves were cautious when the force field of their detainment cell deactivated. But eventually they gathered up their courage and ran out towards the exit. After waiting 30 minutes, he released the vampires and tossed them several blood bags he found on the way back to the containment wing. You should start heading off as well, vampires. Thank you for rescuing us, Hellhound. We're in your debt. We'll make sure to pass the word on to the Vampire Queen of your deeds here today. We might be low when it comes to vampire rank, but she'll be greatly relieved that the humans responsible for our capture, torture, and experimented on were given their just rewards. You must. I suggest you get out here. Once I free the humans, this place won't be here for very much longer. The werewolves are most likely already out. So you just have to follow the corpses. If I missed any. Thank you again. As the vampires run off to the exit, after another 30 minutes, Deku freed the humans last. Follow me. I'll leave you out of the way of this place. And it would be in your best interest to forget what happened here today. It'll make your life a lot more easier. Dusk also freed the animals. Oddly, the animals just followed Dusk without attacking any of the humans. As he led everyone towards the exit, they had to use the elevator more than once, but eventually he got everyone outside the building. Dusk got to a safe distance away from the large building and pulled out a small detonator out of his pocket and handed it over to Nezu. I believe you deserve the honor. What is this? As Nezu hold onto the detonator. It's a detonator to their explosive supplies. Apparently it was part of their armory. It's very odd that a lab of science would have such a thing, but at the end it makes my job a whole lot easier, so I don't have to use my magic. All you have to do is press that little red button on the top of the device, and just watch the fireworks. As you nod and press the small red button on top of the detonator, as there is a huge explosion as dirt and rock scattered all around the area from the explosion. The core of the laboratory overheated and overload, making the explosion even more powerful. Dusk picked up Nezu and gently put him on the ground. And this is where we part ways, Nezu. Where do I go? What do I do now? That's entirely up to you. You're free. Thank you, Dusk. Don't think nothing of it. Dusk walked away and head back to the abandoned orphanage so he can return back to Hell. Sometime later, Dusk returned to Hell and made his way to Cerberus as he walked into Amber's office and placed a flask on her desk after she motioned him to come in. Amber picks up the flask and looks it over. Well done. You're on the middle floor of the building. Head to level 5. Someone there will be there to show you around your designated work area. I want you to write me your report on the mission, then send it back to me. I wanted to get the field work out of the way before you start your shadowing over someone, to know what your daily duties will be, while you're not partner up with a devil, demon, succubus, or reaper currently. That shouldn't last very long, because there's already been a request for you to partner up with someone. But I'll reveal that to you to a later date. Depends if they show up today. Gave Amber a short bow and left the office, shutting the door on his way out, and began to head to level 5. When he got there, there was a female hellhound in human form, wearing some sort of secretary outfit, waiting for his arrival, and began to show him around and introduce Dusk to his colleagues and direct him over to his office that he'll be working in. Expecting his own office to himself, he suspects that's probably Scarlet's doing. He had no complaints, regardless, so he immediately went to work to write his report to Amber, to the events, what happened on his first hunt. Amber Ashwood was interrupted from her work from both of her doors bursting open, revealing a girl, young Reaper girl, walked into her office that Amber recognized immediately. It's Yuri. She had a feeling she would show up to Cerberus to get her new partner. It was well known that Grim Reapers of Hell partner up with a Hellhound, one Hellhound per Reaper, devil, or demon. It's an old tradition that Hell and Cerberus likes to uphold. Yo, as as a Reaper girl waved at Amber with a smile as she skipped towards the desk. I know why you're here, Yuri. You're here to see your new partner. And who's it going to be? That I am. I'm super excited about it. I can finally start doing Grim Reaper stuff. I've passed all the tests, so who do I get? You're very fortunate. Your new partner is here, and I believe you two would make a good team. Amber picked up the phone. Would you please, and placed it to her ear, would you please have Dusk come to my office? After getting her response, she hanged up her phone. He should be on his way. Normally, you wouldn't get a Hellhound that doesn't have experience, but he's powerful. He would be the perfect partner for you. I'm not the only one thinks that. Lady Scarlet believes as well. If the Prince of Hell herself says so, I have no complaints. I can't wait to meet my new friend, so we can go on killing people. Just sit down and don't destroy my office. As Yuri has her scythe behind her, while whistling nonchalantly like she hasn't destroyed her office before. Despite Amber's frustration, Yuri and Amber are good friends. They go way back. Yuri sat down and put her scythe against her legs while she pulled out some sort of game handheld device that she got during her last trip to Earth. A few minutes later, Dusk entered Amber's office, noticing the pink-haired girl. As the Reaper simply smiled and waved at Dusk, Dusk ignored her for now and approached his boss, Amber. You wanted to see me, ma'am. Did? Good, you're here. You were recommended by our Prince of Hell, Scarlet, to team up with the Reaper. And I read your report. You're more suited for the front line and promoted to the assault division of Cerberus. The ultimate decision is Yuri. She's going to be testing your capabilities. Right, if you manage to pass my test, we're going to have loads of fun killing people. We should probably take this somewhere else. I highly doubt Amber would appreciate her office being destroyed again. 3 magic circles appeared underneath everyone in the room as everyone was teleported out of the office to the outside, to the training field of Cerberus. Dusk looked around his surroundings, finding himself in a large training field, seeing several Hellhounds scattered all around, noticing their appearance, appearing in the training field out of nowhere. As Amber walked off to the side to watch the test. What sort of test must I pass, Reaper? It's quite simple. Just survive. As Yuri rushed forward while swinging her scythe at Dusk, 2 daggers appeared in Dusk's hands, in time to block the blade of the scythe. As the Reaper is beginning, the thin Reaper is beginning to push Dusk back with her physical strength. Yuri vanished from sight and reappeared right behind Dusk as she swung her scythe. By pure instinct, Dusk activated his black scale armor on reflex. It was scythe, scrape against the black scales. Dusk's entire body is covered in these scales. Only thing not covered by the scales is his face. Before Dusk could even react, Yuri landed a spin kick and connected with both her feet to a double spin kick into the Hellhound's chest, making him go sliding backwards. Dusk looked around after he got kicked several times to see Yuri nowhere to be seen. As Dusk looked up in the air, as he sees Yuri slashing downwards with her scythe in midair right above Dusk. Dusk only had enough time to do one thing and went into a handstand bicycle kick. The first kick hit the side of the scythe away. Then Dusk proceeded to land several kicks into Yuri's stomach, then jump up from his hands to his feet. Once he saw Yuri shoot off like a rocket in the opposite direction. When he landed on his feet, after she shoot off, he immediately got into a fighting stance with both of his bone daggers in his hands. Deku could feel a large amount of pain in his stomach as his eyes widened to see Yuri lunging her knee into his stomach, lifting him up a few inches off the ground, and immediately headbutt Dusk in the face. Then Yuri slammed the bottom of her palm into a palm strike across Dusk's face, as Dusk goes shooting off to the side, skidding across the ground. Yuri slowly walks towards Dusk when he stopped moving from skidding across the ground, as Dusk got to his feet and created a large burst of hellfire and shot it towards Yuri. Yuri simply cut the flame in half with her scythe as the flames parted away, harmlessly passing Yuri. Nice try. You're gonna have to do a lot better than that to make any serious damage on me. This is so fun. Now it's time to take off the kid's gloves. As you can see, a burst of energy emanated off of Yuri in waves as the ground beneath her starts to crack from the sheer might of her power that's emanating off her body. That's where we're going to end our story off. Sorry about the cliffhanger, but that's all I have currently, so you'll be seeing a new part probably pretty soon, so I hope you guys have a good night and day, judging by time zones, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.